Good evening, everyone. On behalf of CATS, I welcome all the speakers and each one of you to the Play Story session of Festival of Places 2020, jointly hosted by Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, New Delhi, and CATS. The Festival of Places is an initiative of CATS, a not for profit organization working in the area of heritage conservation, management, and advocacy since 2001. We have been working with a vision to highlight local heritage assets, empower local communities, and make heritage conservation participatory and sustainable. An effort such as ours requires technical and financial assistance as well as patronage. You can support and participate in our multiple initiatives and programs by volunteering your skills and contributing financially. Do visit our website www.indiaheritagehub.org or write to us at info@catsindia.org for more details. We at CATS feel very strongly about the dismal state of public spaces in our cities and firmly believe change in the way we think, talk, and use public spaces can only begin at the grassroots by creatively engaging people with places and empowering them to make a difference to the places and spaces around. The Festival of Places is an idea born out of the spirit of volunteerism to come together, collaborate, co create, and celebrate places that nurture health, happiness, and foster community living. The festival aims to bring people, places, and memories and their interrelationships at the forefront of public discussion. It envisions to investigate places, the people who inhabit them, the collective and individual memories that are integral to places, and present them in a new way to leverage discussions on the future of public spaces. The festival provides an opportunity to people for sharing their personal narratives. Moreover, the festival aims to help discover the much overlooked human dimension of spaces. The main highlight of the festival this year is Play Stories, a series of online storytelling sessions that help understand the hidden dimensions, multiple interpretations, and varied memories associated with places, highlighting their distinct characteristics as well as unraveling the bond that people have with them, a connection that lives through their experiences. The storytelling sessions by professionals, scholars, and students from diverse fields focused on public spaces have been planned around the theme of exploring memory in places. In our last Play Story session, we talked about the experiences and memories around Deepor Beel near Guwahati. Today, we will crisscross the northern plains to head to Vrindavan on the banks of the Yamuna River in the heart of Braj. Vrindavan is one of those very few places where human, nature, and the divine come together in a magnificent conjunction. It is a cultural and religious pilgrimage center of immense significance. The most striking feature being the dexterity and wisdom with which the environmental focus was intertwined with the humane and the divine. Only when one delves deeper into mythology and the mundane simultaneously does one realize the unique essence of this place. The title of today's play story is Vrindavan, celebrating people's space in Krishna's abode. Our storyteller for the session, Ms. Neha Goel Tatev, will be taking us to the narrow and winding lanes of Vrindavan to discover how this ancient city has shaped over hundreds of years and what people's space in this land of Krishna is. The place expert for the session, Ms. Amita Sinha, will expand the narrative around this very unique cultural landscape and share her experiences and memory of this spiritual land. To enrich the conversation and connect with people belonging to the place being discussed, we have for this session a special invitee, Mr. Hare Krishna Vrindavani, a resident of Vrindavan, who would be sharing with us his love for the place and what keeps him deeply connected to it. Our play storyteller Neha is an architect, urban designer with professional experience of over 16 years in the field of architecture, urban planning, design, and interior design. She is a meticulous professional and has trained herself both in designing and research and teaching. Working as visiting faculty for architecture and design schools in Jaipur since 2015, she has been mentoring students to understand multi-dimensional fields of architecture, design, and planning. She has an extensive experience of working on dense urban neighborhoods, urban transit nodes, city centers, waterfront, and historic town revitalization. She has actively been involved in presenting her works at various national and international platforms. Her work on urban renewal of historic core of Vrindavan was conferred the first prize for the prestigious CUA National Awards for Excellence in Postgraduate Thesis in Architecture for 2019. Being founder, partner, and principal designer at Navya Designs, Jaipur, she has been always connected with practical aspects of architecture and design. Our place expert, Ms. Amita Sinha, is a former professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and has taught in the Department of Architecture and Regional Planning, IIT Kharagpur, and in the Humanities and Social Sciences departments at IIT Gandhinagar. She is the author of Landscapes in India, Forms and Meanings and Cultural Landscapes of India, Imagined, Enacted and Reclaimed, editor of Landscape Perception and co-editor of Cultural Landscapes of South Asia, Studies in Heritage Conservation and Management. Her articles have been published in Landscape Journal, Journal of Landscape Architecture, International Journal of Heritage Studies, Journal of Urban Design Studies in the History of Gardens and Design Landscapes, Architecture Plus Design, Mark Publications, and Tecton. She was a senior Fulbright researcher at Intact New Delhi in 2009 and is a recipient of Fulbright Nehru Academic and Professional Excellence Award Fellowship for 2018-19. She received the National Merit Award from American Society of Landscape Architects for Cultural Heritage Project on Taj Mahal, India in 2001, and Environmental Design Research Association Award in 2018. Our special invitee as place resident, Mr. Hari Krishna Vrindavani, is Managing Director, Bharati Sanskriti Shiksha Sansthan, Vrindavan, New Era Public School. Born in Vrindavan, his father, Pandit Totaram Sharma, is an outstanding performer and teacher of Pakhavaj, a top grade artist of all in India Radio and Doordarshan. His father has received several honors, including the National Sangeet Natak Academy Award from the President of India for his dedicated work in the field of music. Sri Hari Krishna himself has received his training in music from his father and was groomed in the art by noted classical vocalist Pandit Harish Tiwari, who is a disciple of Bharat Ratna Pandit Bhimsen Joshi ji. He has completed his bachelor's in music from Prayag Sangeet Samiti Allahabad and Sangeet Shiromani Diploma, MPhil from Faculty of Music and post-graduation in music from Ramjas College, Delhi University. He is also a regular performer trainer for radio and Doordarshan and runs an institution of art and classical music and Braj folk music through Bharati Sanskriti Shiksha Sansthan and Brij Sangeet Parishad Vrindavan. So we begin our conversation with Radhe Radhe, a form of greeting unique to Vrindavan. तो चलिए हम वृंदावन की कुंज गलियों में लोगों की जगहों को ढूंढते हैं. I now invite Neha to present her play story.
A very good evening and Radhe Radhe to all. And thank you, Urvashi ma'am and CATS for organizing this great event and giving me opportunity to share my place story with you all. So as said by Zukin, public places are window into city's soul. So here I am presenting Vrindavan through its public places. So as you all may know and already Urvashi ma'am has introduced, Vrindavan is a small pilgrim town of North India, which is known majorly for its association with Lord Krishna. And Vrindavan at the time of festival hosts 4 to 5 times more floating population than its local population. So this is a town where the populace and the tourists, the rich and the poor, the local, native and the migrant all exist, interact and celebrate side by side. So in my video, I have tried to give a brief introduction of Vrindavan and glimpses of various interwoven public spaces such as ghats, streets of like temple streets and riverside beds and Yamuna river bed, and the social cultural practices around it. So I hope you like the video. Just have a look of the video and then maybe we can further summarize it. Urvashi ma'am, can you play the video?
Yes, I will share.
Yeah, sure. There have been certain cities which are known for their political and economic significance. The city I am going to talk about is known for its cultural significance. It celebrates the childhood of Lord Krishna. Vrindavan, a small town of 71,000 population and 5,000 temples, 80 miles southeast of Delhi on the banks of sacred Yamuna River. It is considered one of India's holiest places of pilgrimage. The name Vrindavan comes from words Vrinda, which means holy basil, and Van, meaning grove or a forest. These forests were the playground of Lord Krishna, where he used to come and perform leelas, which are also known as
playful pastimes of Lord Krishna with Radha and his cowherd friends. This entire region, which is associated with Lord Krishna's birth, childhood, and adolescence years, covers 35 square miles at the juncture of three northern Indian states, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Haryana, known as Braj Bhumi. Vrindavan, where Lord Krishna is believed to have spent his childhood, acts as an epicenter of Braj Bhumi, soaked in cultures and traditions, is still very much alive and attracting more than 13 million tourists per year from all over the world. Vrindavan has a long history of development as a pilgrimage site. Pre 16th century, it was merely a wild, uninhabited jungle used for pastoral and agrarian purposes. In 16th century, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his six disciples translated the forest with their divine vision. One Upvan typology of landscape gradually transformed into cluster housing with the influx of saints and pilgrims. The heritage scape and landscape of Vrindavan carries deep symbolic imprint that construct the cultural narrations of Krishna's Ras Leela. And these narrations are quite visible in the forms of kathas and rituals one can experience at its interwoven public spaces, such as ghats, temples, nikunj, and temple streets. There are more than 5,000 temples of Radha and Krishna in different forms. Every day at 4 o'clock in the morning, Vrindavan comes to life. Bells and conch shells resound from many temples, echoing their way through the dark alleys that weave the town together. My first experience with the city was as a pilgrim, desiring to have a glimpse of the famous Krishna temple, Sri Banki Bihari Ji. As one reaches to Vrindavan, the imprints of the Radha Krishna's eternal love start surfacing with the welcoming sounds of Radhe Radhe. Historic core of Vrindavan, where most of these celebrated temples are situated, has narrow labyrinth of streets, which are thronged by the pilgrims throughout the year, with a wish to connect with Krishna and his life episodes in totality. Streets of Vrindavan have always been the public spaces around which the social life of its inhabitants revolves. It boasts of vibrancy, culture, and exhilaration of senses. The temple streets are living corridors where people congregate, celebrate, and interact. These are cohabited spaces by pedestrians, rickshaw pullers, thela walas, stray animals, bicycles, and two wheelers. House activities are extended up to the streets, such as cattle rearing, washing, tree worshipping, neighbor socializing on Gokhe or Chabutra. The building heights, narrow and interwinding streets, flanked by shops with overflowing merchandise, makes it very proportionate to human scale. Vrindavan is also known for its colorful festivals that are celebrated throughout the year. All the festivals celebrated here are centered on Lord Krishna and his consort Radharani, such as Holi, Krishna Janmashtami, Radha Ashtami, Haryali Tej, Brahmotsav, etc. Core zone area of Vrindavan has dearth of open areas. So most of the festivals are celebrated in the streets in the form of processions and circumambulation. During these festivals, people are seen dancing, singing, and performing dramas to the extreme most because of the embodiment of love that Krishna used to spread. These streets may seem crowded and chaotic, yet they are beautifully alive and throbbing with vitality. Flower garland making, tulsi beads rosary making, poshak making, food items and milk products such as sweets are regular part of street side activities in Vrindavan. The morning chants of Radhe Radhe, sandalwood clad foreheads, tulsi bead rosary, shops selling temple idols and offering in the form of sweets and flower garlands celebrates the cultural history in a very unique form. Every tree in Vrindavan is believed to be a kalpvriksh or the desire fulfilling tree. The flora and fauna of the town is believed to be fully involved in the celebration of Krishna's Ras Leela. Krishna's playful analogies are deeply rooted to the ecology and intangible heritage of Vrindavan. Another unique attribute to Vrindavan's heritage scape is its geographical form, which is like a peninsula, surrounded by river Yamuna from all three sides. The shape of the landmass flanked by river Yamuna creates a riverfront which is almost 4 to 5 kilometers long. At this point, let's also look at the morphological layout of the city. This is Vrindavan town, surrounded by river Yamuna from all three sides. The area marked in red is historic core of Vrindavan. These are series of ghats, palatial houses of different provinces lining the ghat. Numerous temples distributed in historic core of Vrindavan. A circumambulation road, also known as Parikrama Path, introduced between the ghats and the river. The city's interaction with water of Yamuna river is through flight of steps, also known as ghats. There were 32 ghats, out of which only 2 ghats presently have water. Ghats of Vrindavan shows eclectic style of different states, mostly adorned with red sandstone. These ghats used to serve as an imposing entrance to the city when travel was through Yamuna river. Rituals performed on the ghats by the river Yamuna establishes a dialect between the performer and the river. These ghats are the imprints of the cultural narrations of Krishna's Leelas. Kalide Ghat is associated with Krishna's dance on serpent. Cheer Ghat, where Krishna stole clothes of gopis, and Keshi Ghat, where Krishna killed demon Keshi. All these live episodes of Lord Krishna are enacted by performers in the form of folk theatre, also known as Ras Leela, on special occasions and festivals. In festive season, the roads and temples are decorated with flowers, enchants of Krishna, music of flute, conch shells, drums, brings together the entire city to celebrate the occasion in a special way. It is said that once you visit and witness these festivals in Braj Bhumi, you can't stop yourself to revisit this place again and again. This is the magic of this magical city, together with the faith and belief in Krishna. In recent years, Vrindavan has fast emerged as a favorite weekend getaway for urbanites from Haryana, Punjab, and Delhi who wish to mix pleasure with pilgrim, attracted by sprawling ashrams of New Age gurus. Once, the forests of Vrindavan used to be home for variety of flora and fauna. Troops of monkeys, cows, and peacocks were regular sight here. They owned the place as much as humans do. In Vrindavan, sick and abandoned cows are nurtured and treated until their natural death. Here it is believed that all animals deserve to be free from hunger and terrible painful diseases. The city, which imbibes word forest in its name, is deprived of these forests of any form because of the urban sprawl and excessive pilgrim load. Visiting to this culturally rich historic town Vrindavan teaches us to live with the ethos of ancient India, to live in ecological harmony with spiritual principles. The coexistence of spiritual ideals and metaphors, increasing visitor loads, and a mismatch between the growth and conservation has created a dichotomy in the very basis of its evolution. A walk through Vrindavan teaches us while the journey and routes are important, the narrations associated with the physical places are no less important. They need to be talked about through the means of rituals, stories, or katha kahanis.
Thank you so much, Neha, for this very beautiful visual narration of a very important place in Rajbhumi. Would you like to give some concluding remarks to your play story so that?
Yeah. Thank you, Vishnu. To summarize the video, I would say that it is the experience one has in Vrindavan's public places, which creates a strong connection or form a collective memory of the place rather than the aesthetic value of the place itself. So, same temple streets hold different experience for people. Some find them full of vitality, liveliness, and activities due to the various commercial spillovers of temple-related merchandise. And while others may find it difficult to commute and only visit due to the presence of temple on that particular street, but the spirit of the place, the chants of Radhe Radhe, sandalwood clad foreheads, and sound of bells and conch shells, this gives a strong spiritual context, and that stays with the pilgrims or with us for lifetime. And so I would say there is a significance of both tangible and intangible aspects in determining the sense of place. And the public places of Vrindavan in the form of sacred groves, ghats, kund, and temple streets that manifest the ethnic Indian culture. And I feel historically the ecological consciousness of people of these places was inbuilt in the form of rituals and the societal norms. Like trees, animal, rivers, all were worshipped. And basically, nature used to be worshipped. So even their planning system respected the geoform and the climate of the city. But as our pilgrimage practices are changing and we are moving from pedestrian to motorized vehicle, so the character of these places are also changing. And to conclude, I would say that the metaphysical ideology or narrations, those are the dominant force in shaping the cultural landscapes of Vrindavan. And to explore memories in these places, it is important, rather imperative, to have dialogue between the human and the nature. That's all. Thank you. Thank you for watching video.
Thank you, Neha, for your comments. I would now take the story forward, inviting Professor Amita Sinha to share her experiences about Vrindavan.
Thanks, Urvashi. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be here. And I really sincerely appreciate watching and being able to respond to Neha's very interesting take on public spaces. I have a few thoughts to share about Vrindavan's place in the cultural imaginary of Hinduism. So if I can share my screen. So Vrindavan has a special place in the Hindu cultural imaginary, we know that. And this cultural imaginary is tied to a certain set of images of a pastoral landscape where Krishna roamed with the gopis in mythic time. Yamuna too has a special place in these images. It flows by the groves where Krishna and gopis played. The cultural imaginary is based upon a transcendental view in which nature is the medium of divine manifestation, and the forest grove is the archetypal garden here. Now, the question before us, which Neha has focused our attention to, is can Vrindavan still reflect this cultural imaginary? What if the riverfront is reclaimed in the image of the garden grove? So here we should look at the Kunj, which is a grove of flowering trees and a very popular subject of Pahari and Rajasthani paintings. This grove depicted on the banks of the river is where Krishna, Radha and gopis play. And here trees are symbols, the dark tamal of Krishna, the flowering kadam of Radha, who are portrayed standing under the tree, the tall tree trunk, a vertical anchor for their figure in the picture plane. Now the clearing in the grove is the spatial archetype of the round, the circle drawing the gopis and cows close to Krishna. We see in this painting of Punjab Hills that Yamuna flows in the foreground, forming a band lower down in the picture plane. It's filled with lotuses and their petals, pair of cranes can be seen, flowering vines intertwined with the tree, a dark sky is the background. The enclosed space is perfect for Radha and Krishna's love trysts, and they're waiting in anticipation of union. Trees with climbing, flowering vines, lotuses and birds symbolize love, renewal, and plenitude. The grove is a natural garden in springtime. It represents a way of seeing nature as resonant with human feelings of love and separation, Virha. And the sympathetic correspondence between nature and human emotions implies that rasa is shared by human divine and the non-human world. So the garden grove is a perfect setting for Shringar, Madhurya, and Virha rasas. Now this Mewar painting depicts the Nikunj, or the bower, framing Radha and Krishna. Garlands are hanging from the flowering vines of the arbor. There's a crescent moon in the starry night sky. The Sakhi standing under the tree outside keeps watch as the couple make love. Yamuna flows down below, filled with flowers, lotuses. Krishna's circular dance with the gopis, Ras Leela, on the full moon night of Sharat Purnima is much celebrated in the literary and visual cultures of Braj. In these Vichwai and manuscript paintings, Ras Leela occurs in a clearing within the grove on the banks of the Yamuna in Vrindavan. So the landscape is structured as an event in visual perception, and it becomes the Ras, and is represented as such. So the clearing becomes a Ras Mandal, the round as a spatio-temporal event. The 19th century Nathdwara Pichwai on the top shows Ras on one side with Krishna and Radha in the center, Krishna duplicating himself in dance with each gopi. On the other side, the center is empty, gopis are holding a canopy symbolic of Govardhan on the ghats to the river down below. In the Mewar painting, Krishna is at the center of the circle of dancing gopis, while Radha and her Sakhi, who acts as a messenger, are shown in another grove. The Kangra painting shows the gopis searching for Krishna in the grove after he left for Mathura. They are asking the trees for his whereabouts. And nature is sentient in this episode, capable of responding. This famous episode of Krishna stealing the clothes of gopis as they bathed the Yamuna is depicted in the 17th century manuscript painting of Bikaner. You see, Krishna is hiding in the kadam tree on the grove. In the background, the hills stretch to the horizon. So, besides the garden grove, the Yamuna riverfront in Vrindavan is well known for other episodes in Krishna's life. For instance, Kaliya Daman, Kaliya was a poisonous naga living in the Yamuna. He ensnared Krishna in his coils when Krishna dived into the river to retrieve a ball. He was playing with his sakhas at this time. Krishna expanded his form. Kaliya was forced to release him, and then Krishna dances on Kaliya's head, releasing the poison so that he would no longer pollute the river. As Kaliya begins to die, his wives pray for mercy, and then Krishna asks Kaliya to leave the river and go to Patal Lok. So this painting shows the scene underwater while Yashoda, Nand, and other Brajvasis look on. And I think this is what really establishes Krishna as the environmentalist of the Puranic era. And it's a model that it's a mythic model that we are well advised, to translate in our contemporary times, especially as pollution in our rivers, Yamuna and Ganga, is growing. Keshi or Keshi, the ass or horse demon with long hair, hence the name, was sent by Kans to kill Krishna. As Keshi charges, Krishna catches hold of his legs, tosses him. Keshi then opens his mouth. Krishna thrusts his left arm into it, and then the arm expands, and then Keshi chokes to death. So this event again occurred in the bank, and that's how Krishna came to be known as Keshav, the slayer of Keshi. So what these images show us is that they are anchors of collective memories, and they form the cultural imaginary. So Vrindavan, however, is an actual place, and it's therefore a physical anchor for the place imagery. The imagined landscape of the myth is not something make-believe, but one that was realized in a certain place. Most recently, in 1515, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rediscovered Vrindavan and his disciples embarked on the task of reclaiming it as a sacred space. So ancient texts such as the 2nd century BC Harivamsa, the 4th century Vishnu Puran, and the 10th century Bhagavad Puran preserved the cultural imaginary in word images. And the medieval paintings we just saw, and there's a huge corpus of them, they represented this imaginary in pictures. Then Vrindavan was found by Goswamis. They discovered place deities who had to be housed in temples. And the landscape was a kunj with, originally it meant a grove with a hut, evolved into the Haveli temple with a grove now in the courtyard. And then around the Havelis, temples grew the settlement. Irfan Habib's research shows that hamlets such as they're called Nagla, Nagu and Gopu, and the village Dosaj grew into the Vrindavan town, a process which is the synocism, called synocism. So before the arrival of Chaitanya and the followers of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we think that Vrindavan was covered with the groves, especially of Vrinda or Tulsi shrubs. And Chaitanya's followers, the 6 Goswamis, were associated with the 6 historic temples. And they've established the oldest temples, Madan Mohan temple on the Dwadasatya hill. Rup Goswami discovered the Govind Dev deity at the Gomti hill. The Gopinath deity was rediscovered under the tree, Memisat tree, by Paramananda Bhattacharya. Damodar Shila had manifested itself in the form of Radha Raman to Gopal Bhatt Goswami. Radha Damodar deity was handcrafted by Rup Goswami in 1542. And the temples are located not too far away from the Yamuna. They form the core of the temple town. As we see in these mappings, that Yamuna's channel narrowed, leaving an exposed floodplain in the east and southwest of the town by the time we come to the 20th century. So this mapping by Nidhi Kapri shows that the heritage zone is the densest part of Vrindavan. The green spaces are vestigial, very few remaining in Nidhivan and Seva Kunj. The Parikrama Marg circumscribes about 3 kilometers of its stretch are along the Yamuna River front. So the ghats which are nodes on the Parikrama Marg, the most famous one being the Kesi Ghat and Chir Ghat. And we know that National Highway and the road from Mathura, as well as the recently built Yamuna Expressway, bring large numbers of pilgrims and tourists. The main streets, if you look at the urban structure, are bazaars. They form a dendritic pattern, which Neha showed so well in her video. And there are alleys, one of them being the Kunj Gully. This is again a historic gully leading, that is a kind of a mnemonic reminder of the Kunj covering this area. So the Kunj Gully leads to the river. Now the area marked in the yellow is a floodplain between the Yamuna and the Parikrama Marg. It's sandy loam, and it really should be a protected zone for developing public spaces. And here in this proposal by Nidhi Jain, the core is linked to the river from significant temples by means of chalks. So the temples Madan Mohan, Banke Bihari, and Radha Vallabh, as well as Seva Kunj and Nidhivan, can lead the pilgrim and the tourist to the riverfront. Wherever land is available on the northern side of the Parikrama, groves can be planted, and they can take devotees around a group of trees, which would be reminiscent of the circumambulatory tours of the 12 ones in Braj. Other activities such as boating, large gatherings on festivals, and bathing can be accommodated in plaza, like the Radhabag Plaza, an amphitheater, as well as the ghats. So the reclamation would then involve actually building up the embankment and planting trees. And we, as I said, wherever space is available, even in front of Chir Ghat, once again, we can have the kunjas, the garden groves, the cultural imaginary of Vrindavan, where mythic memory of Radha Krishna can be reenacted in the appropriate settings. And that is how the memory can be kept alive for posterity.
Thank you, Professor Amita, for this very interesting, interpretation of how the depiction of the Krishna story connects with the ecological aspects, and also about, the work of Nidhi on developing these, string of public spaces. I will now invite Hari Krishna Sharma ji to please share his memories and experiences. हरे कृष्ण शर्मा जी, आप अपने इस शहर में पैदा हुए हैं और इस शहर को आपने बदलते हुए देखा है, तो आप पहले तो हम ये शुरुआत करते हैं कि आप अपने जो आपकी मेमोरीज हैं, जो आपकी यादें हैं शहर से जुड़ी हुई और जो भावनाएं हैं, वो हमारे साथ में शेयर करें। आपका माइक्रोफोन शायद म्यूट पे है। आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है हरिकृष्ण जी।
हेलो।
हाँ, अब आपकी आवाज आ रही है।
हाँ, थोड़ा ये ईयरफोन में गड़बड़ी। जैसा कि बताया, जो हमारे ब्रज है, संपूर्ण 84 कोस में ब्रज का जो महत्व है, पूरा ब्रज है 84 कोस में बोला जाता है। और द्वापर में जो भगवान कृष्ण के प्रपौत्र थे वज्रनाभ जी, उनके द्वारा पूरे ब्रज का भ्रमण किया गया श्री सांडिल्य महर्षि के साथ में, उनके सहयोग से। और तब उन्होंने ब्रज के प्रमुख स्थानों को, प्रमुख प्लेसेज हैं जो उनका अनावरण किया, या कहीं आप जो विस्मृत हो गए थे काल भेद के अनुसार, उनको जागृत किया। तो हमारे यहाँ एक ब्रज परिक्रमा भी होती है, या ब्रज यात्रा कहिए। वो पूरे 84 कोस में 20-25 दिन से 40-45 दिन का पूरा प्रोसेस होता है। वो मथुरा से स्टार्ट करते हैं कुछ, और आके वृंदावन में आके उसका एंडम है। और वृंदावन का जैसे कहें तो वृंदावन तो हमारे प्रिया प्रीतम की, भगवान कृष्ण की क्रीड़ा स्थली रही है। और यह ऐसी रसीली स्थली है कि प्रिया प्रीतम का नित्य विहार आज भी यहाँ पर होता है, ऐसा संत जनों का, गुरुजनों का, साधकों का मानना है। और इस वृंदावन को गोलोक धाम का ही एक पार्ट बोला गया है। वृंदावन को भगवान श्री कृष्ण ने जब अपनी प्रिया प्रीतम श्री राधा जी से वृंदावन में लीला करने के लिए गोलोक विहार में अपना मनोभाव रखा, तो प्रिया जी ने अत्यंत खुश होकर पहले से ही बोल दिया कि वृंदावनम परित्यज्यम पादमेकम न गच्छति, कि मैं तो वृंदावन को परित्याग करके एक पद भी, एक पैर भी जाती नहीं हो गई। मेरा वृंदावन तो निरंतर पास रहता है। वो काला भेद के अनुसार, जैसे काल युग का परिवर्तन होता है, उसके अनुसार यह वृंदावन दोबारा से नित्य धाम में समाविष्ट हो जाता है। और वो कहती हैं कि यत्र वृंदावनम नास्ति यत्र नो यमुना नदी यत्र गोवर्धनो नास्ति तत्र में न मन सुखम, यानी जहाँ श्री वृंदावन नहीं है, श्री यमुना नहीं है, श्री गोवर्धन नहीं है, वहां मेरा मन को सुख मिलता ही नहीं है, प्राप्त ही नहीं होता है। अब बात आपने कही कि वृंदावन में क्या क्या आपने परिवर्तन देखा है अब तक, क्या आपको प्रतीत होता है? तो परिवर्तन तो समय का, काल का एक वो है, परिवर्तनशील है तो होता ही है। लेकिन आज भी वृंदावन के कुछ ऐसे स्थान हैं जहाँ तक शायद आप पहुंचे हैं या नहीं। यदि प्राचीन पौराणिक वृंदावन का दर्शन करना है, वृंदावन को जानना है कि क्या स्वरूप होगा 500 साल पहले, जब हमारे आचार्य मानवाब, सूरदास, तुलसीदास, भक्तिमती, मीराबाई ये रही होंगी, जिन्होंने मीराबाई वृंदावन नी को घर घर तुलसी ठाकुर सेवा दर्शन गोविंद जी को, तो ऐसा प्रतीत होता है कि उस समय क्या भाव रहा होगा। तो ऐसा आज भी है। एक स्वामी हरिदास जी, जहाँ बांके बिहारी जी का प्राकट स्थल है, जिन्होंने बांके बिहारी की आराधना करके उनको प्राकट किया, स्वामी हरिदास जी आचार्य हुए हैं। उनका साधना स्थल है श्री तटिया स्थान, जो कि यमुना के किनारे ही है, परिक्रमा मार्ग पर। आज भी यदि पौराणिक या प्राचीन वृंदावन का दर्शन करना है तो केवल वहीं प्रतीत होता है। अब काल भेद के अनुसार कहिए, समय का परिवर्तन कहिए, परिवर्तन तो बहुत हुआ है, अब आधुनिकीकरण इतना हो गया है, लेकिन अभी भी वृंदावन की कुंज गलियां हैं, वृंदावन के मंदिर हैं, पौराणिक जो राजा महाराजाओं को अटैचमेंट भी देखने को मिलता है। जो पुरानी पुरानी कुंजें हैं, हवेलियां हैं, उनको देखने से लगता है कि भाई कितना यहाँ पर लोगों का अटैचमेंट और श्रद्धा रही होगी। किसी भी राजा महाराजाओं की रियासतें जो होती थी, उनके जैसे आज भी धार्मिक स्थलों पे जाके लोग यात्रा करते हैं, पर्यटन करते हैं, उस समय भी लगता है उनको देख के कि कितना इंटरेस्ट रहा होगा, कितनी भक्ति रही होगी उनकी। उन्होंने अपने अपने प्रीमिसेस, इमारतें वगैरह बनाई हुई हैं। जैसे बुंदेलखंड कल्चर की झांसी वाली कुंज है, रानी लक्ष्मीबाई कुंज, केसी घाट के किनारे, जैसे यमुना जी का वर्णन हो रहा था अभी, तो वहां पर उसको दिखता है, वहां का कल्चर दिखता है। एक नाभा वाली कुंज है, करौली वाली कुंज है, ये बिल्कुल घाट पर ही है, परिक्रमा मार्ग में कालीदह घाट के पास ही। उनको देखने से लगता है भाई ये राजस्थान का कल्चर है, वहाँ का वो देखते हैं आर्किटेक्चर और सारा बनावट उनकी। तो अब नवीन वृंदावन तो बसा जा रहा है, वहाँ पे बहुत सारी वो चीजें नहीं है जो प्राचीन, लेकिन प्राचीनता है। अब हम लोगों की, प्रशासन की और सरकार की जिम्मेदारी है उनको संयोज के रखे, उनको सहेज के रखे और पुरानी जो हमारी उसको संभाल के रखे, जिससे आने वाली पीढ़ियां भी उसको समझें, सोचें और उससे जागरूक हों।
धन्यवाद हरे कृष्ण जी। अब हम कुछ we will like to take some questions from the audience. Reenu Singhal has posted a question. Reenu, would you like to unmute and ask the question?
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Very nice, very good presentations by both. And there were the parallels in both the presentations by Amita ma'am and Neha. You know, the connection to nature and the ecological balance. That is also visible in Neha's video, where the cohabiting, is still happening on the streets, which you don't find in other towns or cities that much, I think. But it's unfortunate to see that and the green cover and the one is all lost. And I think I asked a question about what measures are being taken and to retain that. And I think Neha already answered that, but if you can throw more light on it, both of you, that would be nice. Yeah.
Neha, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I would say there are hardly any measures taken to retain that greenery or those groves, because they are already lost in development. And right now we majorly have two, that is Nidhi Van and Seva Kunj. And there are as such no major provisions in master plan for reclamation of those historic forest covers in the core area. But there are other areas in the outside the municipal boundary which they are trying to preserve as ecological zone. But those green grooves which were there, 12 forest grooves which were initially there is no provision for reclamation of those green covers.
Okay. Thank you.
I think there's one
I
more
also-
question. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
Could I
Reenu.
ask another question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Actually wanted to ask, you said the population of the town is only 70,000 and it goes up to 3 million a year with the tourists.
Yeah.
What happens to the city the rest of the time, to the town, when the tourists are not there? Tourism, the major source of income or livelihood, or how does the city sustain itself otherwise? Maybe Mr. Hari Krishna could answer that. Should I ask it in Hindi? Would that be?
Yes,
हाँ,
yes.
हरे कृष्ण जी, रीनू जी पूछ रही हैं कि जैसे वृंदावन में जो वहाँ की खुद की जो पॉपुलेशन है वो काफी कम है, पर जो पर्यटक आते हैं या वहाँ पर जो दर्शन के लिए लोग आते हैं उससे उनकी काफी पॉपुलेशन बढ़ जाती है। तो जब कोई पर्व नहीं होता है, जब तीर्थ यात्री वहाँ नहीं आ रहे होते हैं, तो उस दौरान वहाँ के लोग जो वहाँ के व्यवसाय हैं वो कैसे अपने आप को उसमें सस्टेन कैसे कर पाते हैं, अपने आप को वो किस तरह से अपनी जीविका करते हैं पूरी?
नहीं, देखो जो पर्व हैं, फेस्टिवल्स हैं, उस समय तो इंटरनेशनल लेवल तक के लोग बाग आते हैं यहाँ पर्यटन के लिए। और उसके बाद ये श्रद्धा और आस्था का ऐसा स्थान है यहाँ पर लोकल लोग भी हैं, वो भी बहुत आस्थावान हैं, और जो वास्तव में मंदिरों पर, टेम्पलों पर और आश्रमों पर उस पर आश्रित हैं, उससे उस समय में जीविका चलती है उनकी। और जो जैसे एक हमारी फैमिली रूटीन का जो खर्चा होता है, एक्सपेंसेस होते हैं, उसी तरीके से आप यकीन मानिए वृंदावन के जो लोकल रहने वाले भी हैं, उनका भी एक पार्ट इनकम का ऐसा है जो उस पर खर्च करते हैं। तो जिनकी आजीविका या जिनका रिसोर्सेज केवल मंदिरों से भगवान के उससे है, तो वो लोग परमानेंटली वहां पे खर्चा चलता है उनका। जैसे फूल माला वाले हैं, दूध वाले हैं, मिठाई वाले हैं। यमुना जी जिसको जाना है डेली, तो वो प्रसाद
Okay. Shukriya. I think I'm not getting his voice now.
I think we lost the connection.
Yeah. Shukriya. Yeah, Shukriya.
हरे कृष्ण
Thank
जी,
you.
आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है। I think we move on to the next question, which is actually related to what Reenu had asked. Vikas has posted a question. Vikas, would you like to unmute and ask?
Yeah, hi. So thank you so much for, very nice presentation by Neha, and really nicely, narrated story by Amita ma'am. I wanted to check because I had seen some, the UP government had hired Braj Foundation, and there were, proposals to revitalize this place as well as Govardhan Parbat. So, what has happened to that? Is that gone in, some good way in revitalization the place?
Amita ma'am, would you like to answer that? Or
Yes, we had worked actually with Braj Foundation on Govardhan some years ago. And I had also worked on the Yamuna Ghats in Mathura, and more recently have become very interested in Vrindavan riverfront, Yamuna riverfront. So I think, I'm not sure, Braj Foundation I don't think it's gone beyond preservation and renovation of the kunds. Brahma Kund in Vrindavan is a very well-cited, well-known example of their restoration of kunds. But I think what really needs to be done is to look at Braj in its entirety. And, it's not a matter of preserving one ghat, a few ghats, or a few kunds. It's looking at the interconnected web of green cover and water bodies, including, of course, Yamuna. And I think for this reason, we really need to come up with a Braj level cultural heritage body. And that body, should be really responsible for raising awareness, negotiating with different development authorities. Even I think going forward with listing Braj as a World Heritage Zone.
Yes, I think Braj Foundation has been very instrumental in the revival of kunds all over in the Braj region. The entire Braj region, they have undertaken a lot of, all these old kunds had got silted. And I think they had done very commendable work with regards, desilting of these kunds and, restoring the water sources to these kunds. And I have, on my personal visit to Vrindavan, I had seen some of the ghats which I have, now have got disconnected with the Yamuna River. They have actually been, some kind of a project intervention has been done there to restore the ghats. Though I'm not very happy with the way, the kind of these projects have undertaken. It's been more like a preservation of the ghat, like a museum, rather than trying to connect the idea and the essence of the place somehow to the visitors. That would have been more helpful, I think. Ujan sir has something to say. Ujan sir, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thank you. And I really enjoyed. I've been watching since the beginning. Just wanted to express a view. I mean, we will all know that we have so many cities of our country which are religious. Some are more religious than the other, but all of them have temples and other religious buildings. I have been to Mathura long back with students to study 20 years back, but I visited later a few times with a couple of times with foreigners, one time with my little kids. But one moment I remember when there was a jam on one of the small, not very small gullies, where school children in uniform were stuck. And they said that we can't go because in front of the temple there is a jam of tourists. So we have to now go back and take a circuitous route to reach our school. I mean, that using this example to say that there is another big layer, which is a non-religious layer. There's a huge number of people stay there. And I think someone asked the question about the non-religious time, but it's a daily time and we are talking about public space. And we often talk about tourist space when you talk about public place in these kind of towns. And there are the issues of environment and conservation, which should go along. But we have to, if the city has to work or the town has to work, one has to look at that common man layer. And often the open spaces or public spaces for them some of them cannot work for both. I mean, we always think that every space must work for everything else. If you let other things happen there, other things, it get lost in the other time also. I mean, most of the time religious things will be going on there, and one day the little temple will come up. And so it is not only this, it's children play, women safety, their daily shopping, the prices go up because of the tourist. So the whole system, you just can't control that, okay, this shop will sell. But you have to make this network of public facilities which are non-touristic, and you have to protect them as we protect our environment. And it is possible and feasible if you really look at the networks and where people live, and you reroute things in a different way, encourage development in a different way, always keeping in mind that the tourism or the religious thing is the backbone, and that's the economy. So we have to do that. But at the same time, we can always look at a resident public layer of public space and public amenities. And that's one point I wanted to make, and we often do face it while working on urban design in this kind of religious towns. Thank you. I really enjoyed whatever is happening. Urvashi, congratulations. I think one more successful event of yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And it is very rightly, put, you have raised a very important and pertinent issue about the life, the local rhythms, the daily rhythms of the people who actually live there. So that is a very important aspect. And especially when you're talking about public spaces, I think, I hope somebody, gets inspiration from this and takes this aspect as a research on Vrindavan, which is, runs parallel to the pilgrim and the, spiritual aspect of the place, which is very important. In fact, I think a few people have actually also observed that, these parikrama margs have now become almost like hyper, like highways. So the original parikrama, the feel of the parikrama marg originally was something else, and now with all kind of, infrastructure and everything being built into it, and yet not being able to cater to the needs of the local and the tourists there. I think there's somewhere we need to check this hyper commercialization and commodification of what I would say, the Krishna consciousness. So there has to be a balance between how much has to be allowed in a specific place, and especially with places like Vrindavan, and with a situation like a pandemic. I think visitor movement management is a very important aspect and should be taken care of in our pilgrim towns. Thank you so much, Amita ma'am. Thank you, Neha. And thank you, Hari Krishnan ji, for joining us and for sharing your stories and experiences, memories and learnings with us. I will now request Manju, can you please share the poster for the next session? Yeah. The next play story session titled Dakhini Sarai, a traveler's refuge on the Badshahi Sadak, is scheduled for 21st February 2021 from 5 p.m. onwards. Our storyteller for the session, Miss Bhavya Janji, will be taking us through the lush green landscape of Punjab to discover the Dakhini Sarai built in 1640 AD by Ali Mardan Khan during the reign of Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. The place expert for the session, Ms. Gurmeet Rai, will be taking us back in time, expanding the narrative around this historical sarai and unravel the unique cultural landscape, traveling along a very special and important road which has been there for centuries in different avatars, right from Uttara Path to Badshahi Sadak to Sadke-Azam to the Grand Trunk Road. So stay tuned for our upcoming play story. I personally thank each one of you for your participation and support to the Festival of Places. Look forward to meeting all of you again next Sunday, same time, same place, for another exciting journey through the landscape of our country. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you and very good evening.
Thanks. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe, Radhe, Radhe.